The first thing you learn in search and rescue is that the wilderness doesn't care about you. The second thing you learn is much worse. Sometimes the wilderness notices you. I've worked search and rescue in Appalachia for almost 12 years. I've found lost hikers, missing children, runaways, bodies, a lot of bodies. Most cases have explanations. Exposure, falls, animals, bad decisions, but not all of them. There are reports that never make it into official records, calls that get buried, incidents nobody wants to discuss during training, stories passed between rescuers after midnight when nobody else is around. The kind of stories that make experienced men stare into their coffee cups and refuse to elaborate. I didn't believe those stories when I started. I do now, because some of the things I've seen in Appalachia should not exist. And the first one happened during my second year on the job. A 9-year-old girl disappeared while camping with her family. Normal case, at least at first. The family had been staying near a remote section of forest along the state line. The girl left the campsite to use a portable restroom. She never came back. We arrived within 2 hours. Search teams spread through the area. Dogs were brought in, drones, helicopters, the whole operation. By sunset, we still hadn't found anything. No footprints, no clothing, no scent trail, nothing. It was like she'd vanished into thin air. That was unusual, but not impossible. Kids wander, panic, hide. Sometimes they move farther than you'd expect. We kept searching. At around midnight, my partner Jake and I found the first clue. A shoe. Small, pink, exactly the size the missing girl wore. It was sitting in the middle of a trail, perfectly upright, not dirty, not damaged, just sitting there, like someone had placed it carefully. Jake immediately looked uneasy. I remember laughing. I thought he was overreacting. Then he asked me a question. Did anybody tell you about the shoes? I said no. He didn't explain further. Just picked up the shoe and stuffed it into an evidence bag. Then he suggested we head back. Fast. That should have been my first warning. The second warning came 10 minutes later. We found another shoe. Different size. Different color. Different child. Just sitting in the middle of the woods. Perfectly clean. Perfectly upright. Like a display. Then another. Then another. Within half an hour, we'd found 7 shoes. None belonged to our missing girl. All belonged to children reported missing over the previous 20 years. I know that because Jake knew every case. Every name. Every date. Every victim. His face kept getting paler. Mine probably did too, because by then I'd stopped thinking it was a coincidence. Nobody said much during the hike back. Around 3 in the morning, we reached command. Jake pulled me aside. Then he told me something I wish I'd never heard. Apparently, there was an unofficial rule among Appalachian SAR teams. If you find a single shoe in the woods, you keep searching. If you find multiple shoes arranged deliberately, you leave. Immediately. No exceptions. I laughed again. Not because it was funny, because it sounded ridiculous. Jake didn't laugh. Neither did anyone else. The next morning, the missing girl walked out of the forest by herself. Alive. Uninjured. She couldn't explain where she'd been. She remembered entering the trees. Then nothing. 3 days missing. No food. No water. No injuries. No memory. Case closed. Officially. But before she left, she told her mother one thing. One sentence. One sentence that still bothers me. She said, "The smiling people wanted me to stay." Nobody knew what she meant. Nobody asked. At least officially. A year later, I learned exactly what she meant. That case started with a hunter. Middle-aged. Experienced. Local. The kind of man who knew those mountains better than most maps. He disappeared for 48 hours. Then called 911. Dispatch patched us through. I answered. The man sounded terrified. Not injured. Not exhausted. Terrified. He kept repeating the same phrase. Over and over. They aren't people. At first, I thought he'd encountered criminals. Maybe drug runners. Illegal camps. Something like that. Then he started crying. Actually crying. And said, "They keep pretending." That got everyone's attention. We tracked the call. Remote valley. No roads. No settlements. Just forest. We deployed immediately. By nightfall, we found him, curled beneath an overhang, shaking uncontrollably. He refused to look at the trees. Even after reaching safety, Even after returning home, he never hunted again, never entered the woods again, and during his official statement, he described something impossible. He claimed he'd encountered people standing among the trees. Normal-looking people, families, couples, children, all smiling, all staring, nobody speaking, nobody moving, just watching him. He initially thought they'd gotten lost. Then he noticed something. None of them blinked. Not once. Hours passed. Nobody blinked. Nobody shifted position. Nobody moved. They simply watched. The hunter eventually fled. The figures followed. Not by walking, not by running. Every time he looked away, they were closer. Every single time. That story should have sounded insane. Except for one problem. 3 months later, I saw them too. I was assisting another search. Missing backpacker. Male. 26. Last seen near an abandoned fire road. We were 6 hours into the operation. The sun was setting. Visibility was dropping. Then I noticed movement. Far between the trees. At first, I thought it was another searcher. Then I realized something was wrong. The figure wasn't moving. It was standing completely still, watching us. I raised binoculars and immediately wished I hadn't. A woman, middle-aged, wearing old-fashioned clothing, standing motionless, smiling, just smiling. I lowered the binoculars. Looked back. Gone. My stomach tightened. I told myself it was exhaustion, stress, a trick of light. Then radio chatter erupted. Another team had seen someone. Then another. Then another. Different locations. Different people. Same description. Standing motionless. Watching. Smiling. The search supervisor immediately ordered everyone out before dark. No explanation. No discussion. Just leave. Now, nobody argued, because the veterans already looked frightened. On the drive home, I finally asked one of them why. The old rescuer stared out the window for a long time, then quietly answered, "They only show up before something disappears." I didn't understand. I wish I still didn't, because 2 days later, one of our own disappeared. A veteran rescuer named Frank, 23 years in SAR, never lost, never careless, gone. His GPS stopped moving at 4:13 p.m. By 4:15, the signal disappeared entirely. We searched for 6 days. Nothing. No tracks. No equipment. No remains. Nothing. It was like he'd been erased. Then, on the 7th day, his radio transmitted. The battery should have been dead. The radio should have been destroyed by weather. Yet somehow it worked. The transmission lasted 12 seconds. I'll never forget it, because I was listening. Frank's voice came through clearly. Calm. Almost cheerful. He said, "Don't follow the lights." Then the signal cut. That should have been impossible, because there weren't supposed to be any lights in that section of forest. At least that's what we thought, until another missing person case 6 months later. And that's when I learned what the lights really were, and why nobody who follows them ever comes back. The official report called it a missing hiker. Female, 22, college student, experienced camper, last known location, a remote section of the Appalachian Trail. Simple case, at least on paper. The reality was different, because the first witness wasn't a person. It was a trail camera, one of dozens maintained by park officials. The camera captured the hiker at 11:43 p.m., walking through the trees, alone, headlamp on, moving east, normal. Then something appeared behind her. A light, small, white, floating between the trees. Not a flashlight, not a lantern, not a headlamp. It hovered, motionless. The hiker stopped, turned, stared. The light drifted deeper into the woods. The girl followed. The footage ended. She was never seen again, at least not officially. I didn't know about the camera footage until after the search began. All I knew was that we were looking for another missing person. The operation lasted 3 days. Nothing unusual happened until the 3rd night. That's when we saw the lights ourselves. There were 4 of us. Jake, myself, a K9 handler named Melissa, and another rescuer named Trent. We were hiking along an old logging road when Melissa suddenly froze. Her dog began whining. Not barking, not growling, whining, like it was afraid. Then Trent pointed toward the trees. About 100 yards away, a pale light floated between the trunks. Small, silent, motionless. Nobody spoke. The light remained there, watching, waiting. Then another appeared. Then another. Then another. By the time we counted 12 of them, every person in the team had stopped moving. The lights weren't random. They were arranged, almost like they were forming a path, leading deeper into the mountains. I remembered Frank's final transmission. Don't follow the lights. The memory hit me so hard I actually felt sick. Jake apparently remembered too, because he immediately ordered everyone to back away. Slowly, no sudden movements, no staring, just leave. The lights reacted, not aggressively, not violently. They simply moved. The path adjusted, always staying ahead of us, always inviting, like they wanted us to follow. The dog completely lost control. It began screaming. I've heard dogs bark. I've heard dogs howl. I've never heard one scream. Not before. Not since. The sound echoed through the forest. Then every light vanished simultaneously. Just gone. Darkness swallowed the woods. Nobody slept that night. The next morning we discovered something strange. Our GPS tracks. They didn't make sense. According to every device we carried, we had traveled nearly 14 miles during the encounter. That was impossible. We never left the logging road. We barely moved. Yet the GPS insisted we'd wandered across half the mountain. Even stranger, satellite maps showed our path crossing locations that didn't exist. Entire valleys absent from every survey map. Trails never recorded. Coordinates leading nowhere. When analysts reviewed the data, they quietly archived everything. No explanation, no follow-up, just buried. That should have been the end of it. But Appalachia has a way of refusing to let things end, especially the strange things. A few months later, I got assigned to a recovery operation. Not a rescue, a recovery. The difference matters. Rescues are hopeful. Recoveries aren't. An elderly man had vanished near an abandoned mining town. The area was notorious. Old shafts, collapsed tunnels, dangerous terrain. The kind of place where disappearances made sense. Until we found his campsite. Nothing was disturbed. His truck remained parked. His food remained untouched. His wallet sat inside the tent. Only one thing was missing. Him. Then we found a journal. A small notebook beside the campfire. Most entries were normal. Weather observations, travel plans, fishing notes. Then the writing changed. The final pages were different. Shakier, more frantic. The last complete entry read, "Something keeps calling from the mine." The next page. It sounds like my wife. His wife had been dead for 9 years. The page after that contained only one sentence, repeated dozens of times. She knows things she shouldn't know. Again, and again, and again. The final page contained a single line, written so hard the pen tore the paper. I think it knows I'm listening. That night we searched the old mining district. Nobody wanted to. We did it anyway, because that's the job. Around midnight, we reached the largest shaft, a rusted entrance disappearing into darkness. Nothing unusual at first. Then we heard it, a voice, faint, echoing upward from somewhere below. An elderly woman, calling a name, the missing man's name, over and over, softly, patiently, like she knew he'd answer eventually. Every person on the team froze. The voice continued. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Jake quietly asked a question, the kind of question that immediately makes your blood run cold. Did anyone else read the report? I nodded. So, what did everyone else? The missing man's wife had died 9 years earlier. The voice kept calling. The exact same name. The exact same way. Eventually the sound stopped. The mine became silent. Then another voice echoed upward. A different voice. Male.
Younger. Terrified. The missing man. He screamed once. Just once. Then silence. Complete silence. The shaft swallowed everything. Nobody entered. Not that night. Not ever. The area was sealed the following morning. Officially due to structural instability. Unofficially, nobody wanted to hear those voices again. The missing man was never found. Neither was his body. But 6 months later something even stranger happened. Because another rescue team reported hearing him, alive, calling for help, from a mountain nearly 80 miles away. And that was when I began realizing something horrifying. Whatever existed out there, it wasn't staying in one place. It was moving. And every year seemed to be getting closer. At that point, I'd spent nearly 7 years in search and rescue. Long enough to stop believing in coincidences. Long enough to know when experienced people were hiding something. And people were definitely hiding something. Not civilians. Not hikers. The rescuers. The veterans. The old-timers who'd spent decades working the mountains. Every one of them knew more than they admitted. Especially Jake. By then, Jake had become something of a legend. 27 years in Appalachian SR. Hundreds of recoveries. Dozens of successful rescues. He knew every trail. Every valley. Every forgotten piece of wilderness. And yet there were certain subjects he refused to discuss. The lights. The smiling people. The voices. The disappearances that didn't make sense. Every time those topics came up, he'd shut down immediately. Until one night. One very bad night. The call came in around 1:30 a.m. Family of 4. Lost. Heavy rain. Low visibility. Children involved. Urgent response. We deployed immediately. The weather was horrible. Rain hammered the trees. Wind screamed through the valleys. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. For 6 hours we searched. Nothing. No footprints. No radio contact. No signs. Then one of the children answered their emergency beacon. Little boy. 7 years old. Terrified. Crying. Barely able to speak. The dispatcher patched him through. His voice crackled over the radio. I found my mom. Relief flooded the command post. Until the dispatcher asked where she was. The boy answered. She's standing in the trees. Nobody spoke. The boy continued. She won't come closer. A horrible feeling settled over everyone listening. Then the dispatcher asked another question. What is she doing? The child hesitated. Then quietly replied. Smiling. The command post went silent. Complete silence. Because every experienced rescuer knew exactly what that meant. The dispatcher tried keeping the boy talking. Asked him to describe her. The child started crying harder. Then he said something I'll never forget. She keeps getting taller. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The boy continued. Every time I look away, she's closer. The radio erupted into activity. Search teams converged on his location. We ran through the storm. Branches whipping our faces. Mud up to our ankles. Everyone moving as fast as possible. Then the radio transmitted again. The little boy whispered. She's not my mom. Static. Then screaming. Then nothing. We found the family 3 hours later. All 4 alive. Physically unharmed. Mentally, not so much. The parents couldn't explain what happened. Neither child could. But the little boy refused to speak for almost a year afterward. When he finally did, he told investigators something strange. He said there were people in the forest. Hundreds of them. Standing between the trees. Watching. Smiling. The same description we'd heard for years. The same description nobody could explain. That case changed something. Afterward, Jake finally started talking. Not much. Just enough. A week later we were sitting outside a ranger station drinking coffee. Middle of the night. Nobody else around. Jake stared into the darkness for a long time. Then quietly said, You know what the biggest mistake people make? I shook my head. He took a sip. Then answered, They think the mountains are empty. I remember laughing. Jake didn't. The mountains aren't empty. His voice sounded different. Tired. Old. Like he'd carried something for too long. Then he told me a story. A real story. One he'd never put into an official report. Back in the 1990s, a rescue team disappeared. 6 experienced SAR personnel. All vanished during a search operation. No distress call. No wreckage. No bodies. Nothing. The foundation. Sorry, not the foundation. The state investigators searched for months. They found nothing. Then one rescuer returned. Just one. A man named Curtis. He emerged from the forest 43 days later. Alive. Mostly. Curtis refused to explain where he'd been. Refused medical interviews. Refused psychological evaluations. For weeks he said nothing. Then finally he spoke. Only once. Only to Jake. According to Curtis, the team had followed a voice. A child's voice. Crying for help. Deep into an area that didn't appear on any map. The farther they walked, the stranger things became. Trees moved. Trails changed. Distances stretched. Then they found a valley. A valley that shouldn't exist. Inside it stood hundreds of people. Motionless. Watching. Smiling. Every missing person from Appalachia. Every lost hiker. Every vanished hunter. Every missing child. All standing together. Waiting. Jake stopped talking after that. I asked what happened next. His answer chilled me. Curtis never said. What do you mean? He couldn't remember. That bothered me. Because memory loss kept appearing in these stories. Missing time. Missing details. Missing explanations. Like something was deliberately removing information. The same way a predator removes tracks. The same way a hunter hides evidence. And then something happened to Jake. Something that convinced me those stories weren't just stories. Because Jake disappeared. Not permanently. Not at first. But he vanished for 18 hours during a routine patrol. No emergency beacon. No radio. No explanation. Just gone. When we finally found him, he was sitting beside an abandoned fire tower. Perfectly calm. Perfectly unharmed. Looking out over the mountains. I remember asking where he'd been. Jake looked genuinely confused. Then answered, I don't know. For the first time since I'd known him. He seemed frightened. Really frightened. Then he pulled a photograph from his pocket. An old photograph. Black and white. Weathered. Damaged. The picture showed a group of people standing in front of a cabin. One of them was Jake. Except the photograph had been taken in 1958. Jake wasn't even born until 1971. Thought it was a joke. A fake. Some kind of prank. Then I looked closer. The man in the photograph wasn't similar to Jake. It was Jake. Exactly. Same face. Same scar above his eyebrow. Same eyes. Same everything. The date was authentic. The photograph was authentic. And nobody could explain it. Least of all Jake. 3 months later. He retired. Just walked away. No farewell party. No speech. No explanation. One day he was there. The next day he was gone. The only thing he left behind was a note. A single sentence. Taped to his locker. I still remember it word for word. If you ever hear your own voice calling from the woods. The note ended there. No signature. No second page. Nothing else. Just that unfinished warning. And the worst part? About 6 months after Jake disappeared from my life, I finally understood exactly what he meant. Because one night, while searching for a missing teenager deep in the mountains, I heard my own voice calling my name from somewhere beyond the trees. The first time you hear your own voice, you think you're imagining it. Stress. Exhaustion. Sleep deprivation. Search and rescue does strange things to your brain. You spend enough nights wandering mountains in darkness and eventually your mind starts filling in gaps. That's exactly what I told myself. At first. The search had already lasted 16 hours. A 17-year-old boy disappeared while hiking with friends. Nothing unusual about that. Until witnesses described what happened. According to his friends, he'd stopped walking. Just stopped. Mid-conversation. Then he stared into the forest. Like he'd heard something. The others asked what was wrong. The boy supposedly answered, "Someone's calling me." Then he walked into the trees. Nobody saw him again. That alone would have been strange enough. But then one of the friends added something. The voice calling the missing boy sounded exactly like the boy himself. That detail bothered me immediately. Because of Jake's unfinished warning. The note I'd never forgotten. The note that suddenly felt a lot less mysterious. By sunset we'd found nothing. By midnight we were still searching. Rain had started. Visibility was awful. The forest felt wrong. Heavy. Oppressive. Like the mountains themselves were holding their breath. I was alone when it happened. My team had spread out across a ridgeline. Everyone maintaining radio contact. Everything normal. Then I heard it. My name. Sifli. From somewhere ahead. I froze. The voice repeated itself. Same tone. Same accent. Same cadence. My voice. Not similar. Not close. Every hair on my body stood up. I remember staring into the darkness. Trying to locate the source. Then the voice spoke again. Over here. Exactly how I would have said it. Exactly. For a moment I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. The impossible nature of it broke something inside my brain. Then the voice laughed. My laugh. And all at once, I remembered Jake's warning. Run. I turned and started moving immediately. Fast. Not sprinting. Not panicking. Just getting away. The voice followed. Still calm. Still sounding exactly like me. Calling from different directions. Ahead. Behind. To my left. To my right. Always nearby. Always close. Never visible. My radio suddenly crackled. Dispatch checking in. The sound nearly made me jump out of my skin. I answered immediately, trying to keep my voice steady. The dispatcher paused, then asked a question that instantly made my blood run cold. Who was talking before? I stopped walking. What? We heard another transmission. My stomach dropped. I didn't transmit. Silence. Then the dispatcher answered. Someone did. The radio recording was reviewed later. I wish it hadn't been, because they played it for me. And the dispatcher was right. There had been a transmission. My voice, clear as day, broadcasting over emergency channels. Except I never said those words. The recording simply repeated one sentence, over and over. Come find me. Same voice, same tone, same everything. My voice, not mine. That was the moment I stopped looking for explanations, because explanations had run out. The search continued for another 2 days. Then we found the missing teenager. Or at least, we found something. The boy was standing in a clearing, perfectly still, perfectly unharmed. Exactly like the smiling people witnesses kept describing. Except he wasn't smiling. He was staring upward. At nothing. Just staring. Hours passed before he acknowledged us. When he finally spoke, he asked a question. A single question. One that still keeps me awake some nights. He looked directly at me and asked, "Why did you leave?" I had never met him before. Never spoken to him. Yet somehow he sounded disappointed. Like we'd known each other. Like I'd abandoned him. The boy was evacuated immediately. Psychological evaluations followed. Medical examinations. Interviews. Nothing unusual appeared. No drugs. No injuries. No signs of trauma. Just one strange detail. His memory ended the moment he followed the voice. Everything afterward was missing. Gone. Just like Curtis. Just like countless others. Memory erased. Time removed. Questions unanswered. And then things got worse. Much worse. Because the disappearances started increasing. Every year. More hikers. More hunters. More campers. More unexplained cases. Patterns emerged. Then disappeared. Reports vanished. Records changed. Entire incidents seemed to rewrite themselves. The mountains were changing. Or maybe, something inside them was. The first undeniable proof came from satellite imagery. Government analysts discovered a valley. A massive valley. Several miles wide. Hidden between mountain ranges. There was only one problem. The valley shouldn't exist. Historical maps showed nothing there. Geological surveys showed nothing there. Previous satellite images showed forest. Only forest. Then suddenly, a valley. As if it had always been there. As if reality had quietly edited itself. The discovery triggered a classified investigation. Multiple agencies became involved.